God-given, and it's also
It's never been
putting the squeeze. They make money on
excessive materialism and militarism. We know full well that racism is still that hound of hell.
And we're beginning. Yay. I fucking hate this part of the podcast.
There's never a good way to start.
Yeah, there never is.
For my podcast, it's just have a generic intro, and I just get overly excited and I introduce someone like I'm introducing them in a stand-up show, and I'm like, I go in my Oprah voice. I'm like, and today we have
Yeah, well, maybe you can introduce yourself.
And I'm Atheer Yacoub.
Yay! That's the great way to segue into my introduction. Welcome to Now in Color, the podcast that brings those who have been erased from history back to the forefront, giving them the voice and place that they deserve. I'm your host, Sandie Chang, and I'm joined today by, do you want to do your Oprah voice again?
Atheer Yacoub!
Atheer is a New York-based comedian and writer. Her comedy is inspired by her Palestinian Muslim upbringing in Alabama. She recently made her TV debut on Gotham Comedy Live, which aired on AXS TV. She's also the writer for The Breakdown and Passport Control, both which have been featured on Brick TV. She's also the co-host for the podcast No Fly List, which features funny conversations with brown comedians, artists, and interesting people. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Tell me more about your upbringing in Alabama.
That was interesting. Yes. When you're a kid, you don't really realize the world is fucked up and that people are racist. So as far as childhood goes, I think it was pretty normal. But things changed drastically, I would say, before pre 9/11, post 9/11, because pre 9/11 we were just treated like white people. My family kind of looked what I guess people knew that I looked different, but they didn't know where to place me, or people just thought we were Latino, which was fine because there's only black, white, Latino, but people have no understanding of any other culture. Not all people, but I would say most look at you like you're crazy if you say Palestine. They're like Pakistan, or they say Pakistan, and even that I'm like, oh, I'm impressed. You know that. But I lived in Palestine as well when I was younger. So we kind of moved a lot, back and forth up until high school. So, and then when we moved back kind of for good in 10th grade, that's when 9/11 happened. It was a new school. I'm in, and my teacher was like, I bet it was those damn Arabs. She said that during class. And
your teacher said that.
And I was I was still the new kid and I didn't know anybody. And it was a month into school. And I was like, well, so that kind of set the tone for the rest of my high school. And then I just remember wanting to, I didn't really want to leave. I loved living in Palestine, but it was too unstable because of the political situation there. And I just wanted to, but I loved my family, my cousins and stuff. So I loved living in Palestine, but that just wasn't possible, for too long. And then we moved back to Alabama. And then, I think it was just after that, I realized how racist and uninformed and ignorant people can be. I had a few close friends who kind of understood where I was coming from. But for the most part, I felt that it was hard being an other, being a minority. Even in college, it was okay, but I was just remembering my whole purpose in college was to get good enough grades so I could get into grad school here and leave, because my parents were really conservative and you don't really leave your house until you're married.
Yes, that's exactly the same in Chinese Americans.
Yeah, it's I think in most cultures it's like that. I feel most non-American, non-white cultures.
Yes.
It's you stay at home. Why would you leave?
Yes. And we have to move in with you when you have children and things like that.
Exactly. So it just comes back full circle.
Yeah.
So it was difficult. I will say it definitely, as I said, my bio has inspired me to do stand-up. And I guess then the whole experience was worthwhile because I can't imagine not doing stand-up. And it's kind of what propelled me when I came here, and people were like, wait, you're Palestinian Muslim and you grew up in Alabama. I just didn't realize how weird that was until I moved to New York and people told me that was like really funny and strange. And people kept asking me, because in Alabama, no one goes, what's it like being a Palestinian Muslim here? Like, that's not a question anyone's ever asked me or something that I've really had to think about. But then coming to New York, you know, the land of diversity, and everybody was just like, what? That's crazy. And I was like, yeah, I guess it is.
Yeah. What led you to stand-up comedy? Like, why that and not other?
I've always loved comedy, sitcom. Like when I was a kid, you know, I was like obsessed with like Lucille Ball and Mary Tyler Moore and all these like old timey like shows. And I just loved sitcoms and I was like drawn to that. And then I started getting more and more into stand up. And I came to New York when I was like 18 or 19 on a trip with my friend. I still don't know how my friend, my parents let me go. But anyway, she was like a really devout Muslim and wore the veil. So I think they thought like, oh, we're not going to get into any trouble. So, and then we like went to some comedy clubs and I was like, oh my God, this place is amazing. And this is so cool. Like people are just talking about their lives in this very entertaining way. And then it just kept coming back to New York like every year to visit. And I just really loved it. And then I saw the Arab American Comedy Festival, which is, it's actually coming up in October. And so it's just a festival of other people like me. And I was just watching them and I'm like, wow, like this is the first time I see somebody else who looks like me, who's had similar life experiences, poke fun at that. And I was like, I want to do that. Yeah. And of course, like I didn't do it for the first like few years that I was in New York. Like I wrote all the stuff and I was like, I'm going to submit, I'm going to do it. And then it just like chickened out. And then, I did like a couple open mics and it was like terrifying. And then I started doing improv to help kind of help me get over my stage fright. So I did improv at Magnet for a few years. And then the festival was taking submissions and I was like, I got to do it. So like I made a tape, submitted. That was like over 5 years ago. I think this is my 6th one now or 5th one or something like that.
That's
but
great.
Anyway, yeah. So it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really glad you're doing that because like representation is everything. It means a lot. And I'm sure there will be someone out there who wants to do comedy and then sees you and
that would
be
awesome.
like, yes, I should do it because this person looks like me.
Yeah.
And that's like the thing that a lot of people white people don't seem to understand about representation is
They've
just
never
like,
had to have that experience of feeling like whether it's in a job or on TV or on stage or whatever, you don't see people. They've never had that experience where they don't see someone who looks like them in a position of power or position of importance or just being represented.
Yeah, and just being seen and heard.
Yeah, being seen. Yes.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about your podcast.
Oh, yeah. So our podcast, speaking of, I guess we kind of have similar themes. So we interview like quote unquote brown people, you know, like Middle Eastern, South Asia, or anyone that really identifies Latino, whatever, like any person of color really about their experience of being a person of color or brown in America. Yeah. We have a lot of comedians, artists, actors, people who are traditionally, again, not represented in that field, and writers, and sometimes just like, you know, people that we think are interesting and we want to hear their story. And we just talk about our shared experience. And so hopefully other people who have gone through this, or maybe there's a, you know, a little Muslim girl in Alabama or Mississippi that's like, oh, I'm not the only one that's gone through this. So I hope that people connect to it. And it's just been tons of fun. Even though sometimes we touch on like these like heavy topics like racism and sexism and whatever. It's still like a fun, just lighthearted conversation. And I really love connecting to people and talking to people because we don't really connect to people these days. I'm like, oh, wow, we actually managed to get through an hour and a half conversation without being on our phones or face to face.
So good
without
to talk to someone. Yeah. And it feels, at least for me in this podcast, it feels so cathartic and therapeutic because we're talking about things that are depressing, which is like racism and like white supremacy. And then it does get really sad sometimes, but it's just like, oh, it's really nice to have a space to like put it out there.
Yeah. And find the lightheartedness in it. I think. I mean, that's kind of my mission with stand up, is just find the light in the dark. And I mean, I think it should be everyone's mission in life in general, because life can throw a lot of shit at you and you just have to kind of throw it back.
Yeah, especially after...
Or find the funny or entertainment or connect with other people who feel the same way.
Yeah, I think we all need that, especially after this horrible week.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's funny because like we could be talking about any week.
Yes. Yeah, we don't even have to reference any week.
Yeah, we're specifically talking about like Brett Kavanaugh and all the bullshit that's been going on. And the thing is, like, every day is something new. Like, sadly, like you might think like, oh, this is the worst part, and then something else happens. So, yeah, and definitely, I guess part of the reason I felt our podcast was like timely and is because of like the Trump administration and putting down brown people and the Muslim ban and all this stuff, and we just like want to talk about it. So it is cathartic. It's important. It's important because they want to shut us up and they want to silence us, and I think it's important to just make our voices even louder.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So where can we find your podcast?
It's on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever, I think most places. It's called The No Fly List, and you could find us at No Fly List Pod. You can follow me at Atheer Yacoub. Also, you'll find it.
And we can plug this later, too. So let's get into the person you're bringing back to life today from history.
Yeah. So I really wanted to find a woman of color to focus on. And I came across this woman called Madam C.J. Walker.
Okay.
Are you familiar with her?
I have no idea.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
No, this is good.
It will be a discovery.
Is this something, by the way, history was like my weakest subject in school. So when you asked me to do something historical, I like had a little mini panic attack. Like, oh no, I don't know. Like this has been my worst subject. But people who enjoy history have told me like, you want to approach it as a story. And I'm like, that's true. I think I was just not ever taught history in a fun way. Yeah. I was just kind of like, here are facts that you need to remember and dates. And I'm like, I don't know, this doesn't make sense. I was more of like a science person, like a math and science nerd. But I think this was interesting. So Madam C.J. Walker, she's actually the first female self-made millionaire in the U.S. And she became one of the wealthiest self-made women in America. And she's an African-American woman. And the way she became a millionaire is through a line or a company of hair products that she founded, which I thought was really cool because my mom is a hairstylist, and well, now she's kind of retired. And it's funny, she had this opportunity back in the day to like, she knew the guy from like Farouk Systems, the cheat, like I think it's like a line of a BioSilk. Have you ever heard of them?
Oh yeah, I've heard of BioSilk.
So that guy, like my mom knew him, which is crazy, but she didn't go into business with him. So that was a bad mistake because now he's like a conglomerate, like multi-million, I don't know what. I'm sure he has so much money, but I've always been interested in hair and hair products and beauty products. So I was like, this is so cool. So Madam C.J. Walker, she was actually born Sarah Breedlove, and we'll get into how she got her name later, how she got Madam C.J. Walker. So she was born in Delta, Louisiana, December 23rd. Oh, she's also a Capricorn. I feel like I really...
It's so interesting. I feel like astrology is like making a comeback.
Yeah.
And like, I was never into horoscope. Like, I just didn't get it. And like, lately everyone's just like talking about astrology and they're just like, oh, you're a Gemini. And I'm like, I don't know what that means.
I don't know anything about other signs, unfortunately, but we have a family friend who was obsessed, still is obsessed with astrology. She has this huge ancient looking book, like from like, it looks like the book from Charmed that has all of the what do you call it? Oh my God, the spells in it. And it's this weird, huge ancient book with like astrology facts and things. And she would like sit there and tell you everything. So I didn't like make an effort to learn about astrology, but she would definitely tell me all the time about my sign. But yeah, people have been talking about it lately a lot.
I think it's like to feel like you have a sense of control because like our world is like a hellfire at the moment.
That makes sense. Astrology and religion, which are like two opposite things, but people are drawn to it for the same reason, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's why I'm drawn to comedy, to make sense of the world.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like, I think that's why we're all drawn to some sort of art.
Yeah,
we're just like, let me control something in this crazy world.
Let me turn this into something good. So she was actually the first of, let me see, how many siblings? She had, several siblings. Doesn't matter. But she was the first child to actually be born into freedom after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. Her parents and her older siblings were all enslaved on a plantation, and she was the first one born into freedom. And let me tell you, she definitely rocked that and took advantage.
Yeah.
So basically, her parents actually died by the age of 7, and she moved to Mississippi at the age of 10 and worked
by herself?
I think so. Well, actually, it says here before her first marriage, she lived with her older sister and her brother-in-law, Jesse Powell. But he wasn't super good to her and he mistreated her. So she actually left at the age of 14 and got married to a guy named Moses McWilliams. Oh, yeah, there's more. There's more than him. I was like, is this the same guy she married? No, there's another guy. So then Sarah Breedlove and Moses, they had a daughter in 1885. Her name is Lilia McWilliams. She was born in June 6th, what sign that is.
I feel like maybe that's Gemini because I'm June.
Are you Gemini?
Yeah, I'm June 16th. Okay. My mom's June 7th.
Possibly.
So,
okay.
Yeah, I think that's a Gemini.
And then her husband died like 2 years later. God.
Oh my gosh, everyone keeps dying.
I know. There's so much death. And she was only 20 years old. Oh my God. Can you imagine having a kid? I mean, back then it was so different.
Yeah.
It's like you age like double as fast as you do here.
Yes.
Everyone, you've lived already like so much of your life. Like at 20, I still don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah. No, I even realized that no one knows what the hell they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. But back then, like, you didn't have that luxury. Like, you got to eat, you got to work, you got to have a family. So she had her daughter Lilia, and then she actually remarried. So her husband died in 1887, and she remarried in 1894. But then she left her second husband, John Davis, around 1903. And then she moved to Denver, Colorado in 1905. Wow. So much moving around, so much marriage. And then in 1888, actually, this is before, I guess, she got remarried. She and her daughter moved to St. Louis, Missouri, where three of her brothers lived. And Sarah found work as a laundress. So she was barely making more than $1 a day.
Oh, my God.
Which I don't know what that gets you back then. Probably, I'm sure not much, but...
It doesn't seem like a lot.
Yeah. And it said, but she was determined to make enough money to give her daughter like a formal education.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So that's definitely motivating. That's so cool. So her inspiration for her beauty products came from her own personal experience. She had a lot of like issues with like dry scalp and a lot of like baldness and skin disorders. A lot of this stuff was because of like the harsh products that they had back then, like lye and detergents and stuff in their soaps were just like not really, and stuff that they used to wash their clothes was just like really harsh. And she had a lot of like issues with hair loss and other factors like poor diet, illness, and like a lot of the things that were like, of course not, they didn't have the modern conveniences of like indoor plumbing and central heating, electricity. So all of that kind of combined like took a toll on you. And I'm sure like stress also like messes with your hair a lot. Like a lot of people, like if they're, and I'm a nutritionist too, so I know like if you're not getting a good diet and you know, you're not getting enough B vitamins and protein, all of that can also mess with your hair.
Yeah. I feel like I've recently gotten really into nutrition and
really?
I just drink, I'm on day 2 of drinking bulletproof coffee
because
everyone's like super into it.
I don't know how I feel about it in terms of a nutritional.
It feels like I'm just drinking butter and I'm just like, I don't know how I feel. I mean, I feel
Are you
okay.
making it yourself or did you buy the like pre-made thing?
We're making it ourselves. Like my boyfriend also lives here. He's just not here at the moment.
I haven't tried it. Yeah. A lot of my patients have told me about it. They're like, oh, it gives me energy and I feel, and I'm like, but do do you feel different than having regular coffee? Were you drinking regular coffee?
Yeah, I was like addicted to cold brew. I mean, I still am addicted to cold brew. It's just
I can't do it. It's happening. Too strong for me. It's so strong.
I mean, like I'm not crashing at the moment.
Do you
which,
feel
like,
a difference though?
I don't know. It's only been day 2, so I have no like empirical evidence.
That's true. It's only 2 days.
Moment.
Let me know what happens.
I'll let you know. Yeah.
I will go on record saying that butter and coconut oil are not the healthiest because they're a saturated fat. But we can get into that later. There's a lot of like misconceptions with nutrition. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of like fad diets, and a lot of stuff that people are always like kind of following, and like also even though there are studies for stuff, they're misconstrued and misinterpreted. And then like you'll read something on like BuzzFeed or like whatever Glamour magazine, they'll tell you, oh, do this thing. And it's really confusing for people.
Yes, it is super confusing.
But definitely, yeah, poor diet will mess with everything. I mean, your stress levels, your hair, your skin. Yes. And I don't know what their access to clean water was too, since there's like not indoor plant, like, because that'll also mess with you. But so she actually, the way she learned about hair care was actually from her brothers who were barbers in St. Louis. So that's kind of cool. And then around the time of the Louisiana Purchase Exposition, which was the World's Fair at St. Louis in 1904, she became a commission agent who was selling products for this African-American hair care entrepreneur named Annie Turnbow Malone. That sounds like a mob wife. Not like, that's not what I would think an African-American hair care entrepreneur would call Annie Turnbow Malone. Okay. And she owned this company called the Poro Company. So Sarah, I guess, initially like got her foot in the door in that field when she worked for Malone, who would actually later become her largest rival in the hair care industry.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Getting dramatic
Damn,
here.
I know. Way to turn it around. So Sarah actually began to adapt her knowledge of hair and then hair products, and then she developed her own products, her own line. And then in July 1905, when she was 37, Sarah and her daughter moved to Colorado, which I think I mentioned earlier. This is all, I'm jumping around, sorry. Where she continued to sell products for Malone, and then she developed her own hair care business. And then she got married to Charles Walker in 1906. So this is when she changed her name from Sarah Breedlove to Madam C.J. Walker. That's how she marketed herself. And her husband actually became her business partner, and he gave her advice on advertising or promotion. So he thought it would be a good idea to change her name to Madam C.J. Walker, to be branded as that, because Madam came from like the French like beauty industry, and then CJ, I guess it must be her husband Charles, I don't know what the J stands for, and then Walker, his last name, which I guess it does make a big difference. Like a lot of people change their names if they're actors or performers or whatever, because it just like sounds better.
Yeah, or it sounds white.
Or it sounds white.
Yes.
Yeah, madam. That's true. I didn't really think about that. And I wonder if that was his intention with that. I mean, he was in advertising marketing. He knew what the market was like. Yeah. He must have sensed something there.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, like, did she receive any sort of backlash during this time when she was, like, trying to be an entrepreneur?
I'm sure she did. I can't imagine, especially as an African-American woman. But she was also working for another African-American woman. So I should have dug into that woman's story a little bit more. Yeah. So I guess, like, it wasn't the first time someone, like, took this step. But I don't know. But also, like, her Breedlove, wouldn't that be, like... A lot of their last names are because of their like they were enslaved, and it was like the plantation owner's last name, so they were given this like surname against their will. But C.J. Walker, I don't know. I'm not sure, but I'm sure I can only imagine she got a lot of backlash. Also, it's very cool of her husband during that time to be so supportive of her business. I feel like men, I mean, till now are very insecure if a woman like has her own like business and wants to have her own like ambitions and dreams. They can be really, really insecure.
Yes, still to this day.
Till this day. So can you imagine like 1905, like how that would have been? But I guess he also, being a smart businessman, was like, no, this is a great opportunity. We're going to make it happen. Yeah. That's very cool. Power couple. I think that's really important. So hopefully husband number 3 is the one that stuck for a reason.
Third time's the charm.
Exactly. Also, I wonder if she got backlash for that, for being married and remarried. Because, like, even today, it's stigmatized for a woman to get divorced and remarried. Like, you hear a guy get married, like, 5 times, and people just think it's like, oh, that's silly or funny. But you hear a woman, and it's like, whoa, what's wrong with her? Or even, like, 3 times or something. Or even once, a divorced woman.
Standards.
It's total double standard. So yeah, her husband, Charles Walker, kept giving her advice on how to promote her products, and she started selling her products door to door, and she started also teaching other Black women how to groom and style their hair. Which is, I mean, I have curly hair, and I know that has a lot of like steps to like take care of. I don't do all of it. I know there's a lot that goes into like curly hair care, which I don't really do. I do some of it, and even just like from what my mom tells me. So I can't even imagine like having like African American hair. I know it's like it requires a lot more products, a lot more tending to, a lot more treatment. I know a lot of my friends like we actually had, like in Alabama, my parents had a Black hair product store, like beauty products. And so my parents were like co-owners of that with our family friends. And I just remember like seeing all these products. I'm like, what is all this for? But it's like really cool. So now it's like, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about this connection that I had.
And maybe that's why you were so drawn to C.J. Walker.
I just find it so interesting. I gotta look up her products and see if they're still around. I wonder.
Yeah, I would love to know, like, if anyone, tried to stop her in her endeavor. I mean, she's marketing mostly to Black women.
Exactly.
So I could imagine there's like a lot of support in that community. But
Absolutely.
If there was like any sort of...
I guess she must have not had that much competition besides this other lady, Malone, that she started working for. She was probably her only rival or only like competitor.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, like now when women are in power, there's like all these white men who want to take them down all the time. And I was wondering if it's even like bigger back then.
That's true. I also wonder if men were involved in that industry at the time, like in hair care and stuff like that. I wonder if they just thought like that sexist, oh, that's just like women's stuff. Like, let her do that and it's not going to go anywhere. I don't know.
I almost doubt that, because in the history of white men just hating everyone who takes power. So it'd be interesting.
True. But I wonder, like, they probably didn't care enough about that particular industry that she was in. I can understand. Maybe they probably felt threatened by her power, or kind of undermined her position and like didn't really think that it would go anywhere. Only there was a way to ask Madam C.J.
Google
Walker.
it one day.
Yes. Great questions. So she was selling her products door to door. Also, she started her own like beauty school. She called it Lilia College, which is after her daughter. And she trained other hairstylists, which is really cool. And this was in 1908. So her and her husband, Charles, they went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to do this. So she moved around a lot, by the way. Now that I'm like thinking, like every other sentence is like she moved to Denver and then to Pittsburgh. And then she closed that business in Denver in 1907. And then her daughter I guess she closed the college, and then her daughter was just doing the day-to-day operations in Pittsburgh. And then Walker established a new base in Indianapolis in 1910. I wonder why she moved around so much. I didn't really like get a clear picture on that.
I wonder if it has anything, this could be like in a completely different timeline, how there was like that great migration from the south to the north, but I don't know if that has anything to do with that, or if I'm even in the same.
She does move more north, because in 1913, so 3 years after Indianapolis, Lilia, which is her daughter, convinced her mom to start an office and to establish an office and beauty salon in Harlem.
Oh, yeah. So maybe
Which makes sense, yeah.
in that timeline. I will Google this later.
Yes. So I guess she relocated her business, and then she like established a headquarters for Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company. So she initially purchased a house and a factory. It says 640 Northwest Street. I should have Google mapped that because I'm not sure where that was exactly. But she built like a factory, a hair salon, and a beauty school there to train her sales agents. And she also added a lab to help with research, which is very very cool and like progressive. And she also like assembled a really highly competent staff, it says, of, I don't know, it's like 5 people. And then they helped her, like people she really could rely on. And they helped her like grow the company. And then a lot of her employees, it says most of her employees, including ones in management and staff positions, were women.
That's great.
That's awesome. That she was really, like you could tell that she really cared about that and giving back and empowering other women, which sadly to say is not always the case, even today. Especially today, we just tear each other down. And
yeah, we do tear each other down. I mean, I think I hope at least, like my hope is like the conversation is steering to like supporting women and supporting each other and not viewing each other as competition, because it is because of the patriarchy that we view each other.
They've pitted us against one another. Exactly. And the other thing is, it's like we feel like there's such a small market, like in entertainment or in comedy or whatever it might be. We feel like there's such a small market for women or even minorities. Yeah. And so people start feeling threatened if they're like, oh no, there's only like 5 spots. Whereas if you're a white man, you're not as concerned about that because the world was made for you and no one's going to limit the number of spots or space that you take up.
Yeah. It is like the scarcity is an illusion. It's also a very capitalistic mindset to believe everything is scarce, where I don't think that is the case. I don't believe that's the case.
And like this woman, you got to make your own opportunities. Nobody was like, hey, come in, here's a job, here's like a factory. Like she did it on her own and started so young.
Yeah. And also gave back to other women. And I think that's really important.
I think that's important too, because if you are someone who works with a woman who gives back and they help pave the way for you, hopefully that gives you the incentive to pay it forward and help other people. Yeah. And so we just keep that cycle going rather than the other way around where someone shuts doors on you and then you get somewhere and it's like you don't help other people. You kind of pull the ladder up after you because you're like, well, I got here on my own, so nobody helped me. So you got to figure it out on yourself, which I've come across a lot in like comedy and like other places. I've gotten both, like people who do want to help and extend, and other people who are like sorry, not so explicitly, but you know they just don't help, even though you know they can. Yes. It doesn't really take much for them to do so. Yeah. To open a door or even like a window or like a brief.
Unfortunately, it feels like it's in every industry.
Yeah, it is.
Which is, again, I'm like so like into those. I'm like anti-capitalism. It is very capitalistic, and it's
but it's in the world
us.
In which we live, and then it's like we have to play the game even though we don't want to.
Yeah, well, I would argue not to play that game.
Not
so
to
we
play the
shouldn't.
game of like closing doors on one another and not helping each other along, but the game of like, I got to keep climbing the ladder, not at the expense of other people, certainly. And you can climb it with someone, you can pull someone along with you, but there's still a ladder and there's still a place. Like, I don't know. Or maybe I'm just conditioned to feel that way. I'm also just like an overly competitive person. And I'm like, but I would never want to do it at the expense of somebody else. And if I'm in a position to help someone, I feel truly like honored that I even have any kind of position to be able to extend a hand to somebody else. Like it feels like it feels like it's a really privileged thing to be able to help someone.
Yeah. It's weird because like I used to be very competitive in high school, and it was just because I was just so fucking neurotic in high school. And I think when I got to college, it was just like I realized that everyone was super competitive and everyone was like literally killing themselves over this competition. I went to a very high suicide school.
What school is this?
I went to Cornell. They kill themselves every month. And I'm so sorry, Cornell, for like being so flippant about it. But
I went to Columbia, but for grad school, but everyone was chill then.
Oh my
grad
God,
school,
no
chill.
one was chill in undergrad at Cornell.
Undergrad, I can't imagine. Yeah, but grad school, I feel like everyone's just like, I got in and now I'm just like coasting because I'm not gonna do anything after this.
But
what did you
study?
study?
I studied psychology and human rights.
Oh my God.
And I was always under the mindset that it's just like it's just school. It's gonna be okay. But because everyone was like trying to get into grad school or trying to go into finance, I don't really know any other field that people were going into, honestly. Medical school was obviously a top thing there. And it just felt like really sad to witness, and to also in the same line, I felt like it didn't bother people that there was an epidemic of suicides at this school.
Nobody cares. They're probably like less competition. I think people, they must have their own pressures, and it's sad that they feel that way too.
Yeah, or just seeing it as like a weakness, and I don't believe vulnerability is a weakness, and and that's why I've been such a huge advocate for mental health awareness, because like I do feel like people still like put that stigma on there, and they like talk about perfectionism as if it's a positive trait, where it's not. It's like it's fear, it's anxiety, and it's panic attacks in between that. And it's because like we have this illusion of like everything is so scarce, and that's just like not the case. Like we could be more collaborative, and there's room for everyone to thrive, and if we just like also extend that room to everyone. But because like you were saying, like people at the top keep shutting doors and keep feeding this illusion of like there's not enough for everyone.
Yeah, it's like a small pie, and everyone can only get a piece, and your piece is determined by someone else's. So I don't think there's a pie. I think you can bake more pies.
Yes, you can bake more pies. You can make your own content, like you were saying earlier. And your story is worth being told at the end of the day.
Yeah, and everyone is so unique. I mean, everyone has a place in this world. Yeah. Everyone should put out content and just do something creative, and do something that, even if you're not a creative person, I never really considered myself a creative person, to be honest, but even though I used to write since I was little, but I don't know, and maybe it's probably also my upbringing of, and maybe you feel the same way. It's like immigrant parents, like were your parents immigrants, or is it were you first? Okay.
Yeah, they were.
So it's that mindset also of like, you just got to succeed. You got to do something academic. Like there's not a lot of room for creativity, because that's more of a hobby, and that's kind of distracting from your academics and your work. And so
thankfully my parents weren't like that, which was really, really nice. I mean, they like wanted me to succeed and like make money, but like I think at the end, I was always like really interested in creative writing, and they always knew that, and they were just like, if you want to do that, just do that.
That's so cool.
And they were just like, just don't kill yourself. Yeah. Like they were the ones telling me to calm the fuck down.
You know, I was more anxious about my grades than my parents were, but I knew the expectations they had. Yeah. But they didn't really push it on me. They didn't really project those expectations. Maybe not consciously, but I still felt pressure.
Yeah, I definitely still felt like some sort of guilt, as if like, oh, they came all the way from Taiwan,
so that's
and like,
even if it's not like explicitly said, you still feel like the weight of the generation that's been like before you, the generations before you, and the shit that they've had to deal with, and you're like, I don't know, you feel like this pressure to succeed in a way that maybe other people might not in the same position. I don't know.
Yeah. It's really interesting how like all immigrant children seem to have the same experience of like guilt and shame.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about, also, speaking of giving back, Madam C.J. Walker was also really big on activism and philanthropy. So as she became, wealthier and she became more vocal about her views, her political views, and just her, human rights views. 1912, she addressed an annual gathering of the National Negro Business League, the NNBL, from the convention floor, where she declared, "I am a woman who came from the cotton fields of the South. From there, I was promoted to the wash tub. From there, I was promoted to the cook kitchen. And from there, I promoted myself in the business of manufacturing hair goods and preparations. I have built my own factory on my own ground." Wow. I got goosebumps, like chills when I read that. I was like, Oh, that's beautiful. Like, she really built everything from the ground up. She had all odds stacked up against her. But I think sometimes when you are in that position, you're just like, fuck it, I have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Like, why not?
And like, imagine if like she were more prominent in our history books, and like, imagine the effect.
I've never read anything about her.
Yeah, me neither. Like, all I remember are like, Thomas Edison invented a light bulb, and we all love it. Even though I don't think he actually did. It's like,
I'm
found
sure,
out. Yeah.
And what was the peanut, George Washington carver? There was like something with shampoos there. It was a peanut. Did I just make that up?
Oh, I
told you I almost failed history. Okay.
But like,
we'll Google that later.
Yes, we'll Google it later. But like,
but
yeah,
women, even if it's like, even if African American men are studied in history, it's not as, there's still that sexism. I think we're still not hearing as much about women.
Yeah, especially women of color.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, so she donated a lot to the YMCA. She helped raise funds for the Young Men's Christian Association in Indianapolis's Black community. She pledged $1,000 to build a fund for the Senate Avenue YMCA. And she also contributed a scholarship fund to Tuskegee Institute.
What is that?
I'm not sure. I know Tuskegee University. I'm like, I wonder if that's something related. I should have Googled this a little more. And then in 1913, her and her daughter, Alelia, moved to a new townhouse in Harlem. And then in 1960, Walker joined her in New York, her husband, leaving. So he left the day-to-day operations for the management team in Indianapolis to take over. And then they were living in Harlem. And then she just became more involved in political matters after moving to New York. She gave a lot of lectures on politics, economics, social issues, and conventions sponsored by powerful Black institutions. And her friends and associates included Booker T. Washington, which we've definitely learned about in the history, but Mary McLeod Bethune and W.E.B. Du Bois. And then during World War I, Walker was a leader in the Circle for Negro War Relief, and she advocated for the establishment of a training camp for Black Army officers. Wow. God, she did so. How did she have the time to do everything and raise a daughter and run a business? And like,
she did it all.
Oh my God. And I feel like that's expected of women sometimes. Like,
it is expected of women.
No man would be raising a child.
Oh my God.
Building his own like empire and then doing philanthropy work.
Yeah. And just like the whole emotional labor and the expectation of care is all on women.
Absolutely.
And it's so much work.
Yeah. I can't even imagine doing all of that. But it's beautiful that she really felt like, okay, I got here and I want to help others also and extend a hand. And especially, it seems like education was really important to her. And, you know, for her daughter, for other women and other people of color, other African Americans, she really wanted to make that happen, which was, it's beautiful. It's so nice when, you know, people who make money are the ones that are really deserving, because a lot of times it's not. And you're just like, how did you make, you know, it's beautiful when they actually use their position to help and give back. And like we were saying, it's just not as common. And sometimes, you know, people get involved, especially like I'm picturing like wealthy white Upper East Side women who just like get involved in charities because there's nothing else going on. And that's just like a socialite thing to do. Like they just have their charities, and it's not necessarily because they actually care. Yeah. Sometimes it's like, oh, well, what charity am I getting? It's like a way to kill time and a way to feel like you're adding value. And I'm sure some people really do care, but I also feel like there's this whole like social system going on around that.
Yeah, for sure. And charities, there's like, that's a whole other topic about things. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even if you like just watching like The Real Housewives or something.
I never watched The Real Housewives. My God. I feel like I was just not interested at the time.
It's such a guilty pleasure of mine.
Yeah.
So I don't have cable. I don't have Bravo. But whenever I'm at the gym, I always turn it to Bravo. And that's how I watched it. So it's like my only motivating factor to go to the gym sometimes. Yeah. I'm like, oh, I can watch Bravo. Yeah. And it's like such a guilty pleasure. And I used to think it was it is absurd. I still think it is, but it's just funny, like the types of charities, and you could tell that it's very like self-serving, which is so icky when it comes to charity. I'm like, that's not the point of charity, is to, and it's almost like you're looking down on these people. Like you feel like, oh, I'm just giving them a handout. Like you feel so much better, and it gives you the sense of self-importance. Yeah. Whereas here, it really is altruistic and just like, I need to help people because I know what it feels like to be disempowered and come from a place like this. And they're all African American charities that she's helping, and they've been through the same shit that she has. So she seems to have a lot of empathy.
Yeah, which is great. Yeah. A wonderful woman to look up to.
Absolutely. And then she she joined the executive committee also for the New York chapter of the NAACP, and they organized a silent protest parade on Fifth Avenue in New York. So it's so beautiful. And then she actually sadly died fairly young, but I guess for that time, a lot of people died. She was 51. And I guess the life expectancy back then probably wasn't super high, especially. So she died from kidney failure and complications of hypertension. And then
hypertension, all that stress from doing everything.
Yeah. That's crazy. And then she was actually buried in Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx in New York. If anyone wants to pay their respects.
Yeah, New Yorkers, go check her out.
Yeah. And then so at the time of her death, she was considered to be the wealthiest African-American woman in America. And she was eulogized as the first female self-made millionaire in America. And her estate was worth about $600,000, which at the time, would be like the equivalent of $8 million present day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Like where she started and where she ended is just incredible. And then just to give you a little sense of like, to compare that to the average American's annual salary at the time was $750. So she died with like her estate worth $600,000. Wow. So the annual salary was $750 and she was donating $1,000 to, wow, that's crazy. That's more than a person's salary. Yeah. So that's a lot of money, like relative. It's hard to think in those terms because you're like, oh, $1,000. I mean, that's $1,000 is a lot for me now. Yeah. Can you imagine like 1905 or something? Yeah. And then her daughter's the one that carried out her legacy. So Alelia Walker became the president of Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company. So that's beautiful that she had someone to pass the legacy down to. I wonder what they're up to now. I tried to kind of do some research. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, we'll have to see like what's going on with C.J. Walker Industries.
Yeah,
is that what it's
Madam
called?
C.J. Walker.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. Thank you for bringing that in.
Yeah,
it's like really nice to
forcing me to do some historical research.
Yeah, it's okay. A lot of people are just like, history, oh my God.
I know, but this is important. I know. I feel like if people just took the word history out, you probably didn't even say history, maybe. I think
I did say history.
And then I was like, I'm going to fail. This is a test. See, that's like the crazy competitive part.
Oh my God, for sure. It's just like, it feels like it's not. It's like totally chill, and it's just like it feels like it's like
missing stuff because a lot of this is just stuff from online and Wikipedia and just like pulling bits and pieces.
That's totally fine. This is a lifelong learning podcast. Yeah, it is not I don't graded.
Wanna, do a disservice to her by like missing out on stuff. So, guys, if you're interested, definitely do some more research and more thoroughly.
I think it's just great to like bring her name up because I've never heard of her. I didn't know there were female, like women of color who were millionaires, basically.
She's the first. I was just like, damn. So I wanted to bring in like a badass woman.
Yeah. I mean, the first one I can think of is just Oprah, for example. I'm just like, oh, Oprah did it, I guess. Right. But like to me, that's like modern times.
That is very modern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just like so cool to see that like, she was enslaved at some point in her life and then she like got out of there. And it's a very typical American rags to riches story.
I know. Well, she was the first of her siblings to be born into freedom.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. That's insane.
I wonder how should look this up about her brothers, how they got into becoming barbers and like, I don't know. There are a lot of hairstylists in my family now that I think about it. So I wonder if there's like something genetically that draws you to it. Like I remember my mom had a hair salon in Palestine, and that she ran out of our apartment. She had this like huge salon. It was beautiful. And I would like help out. And like, I used to love doing hair, and I still do. I just don't have the time to work on my hair, especially in New York. You're just like wash and go.
Mine is like, it's always like in between a pixie cut and like the awkward phase of a pixie cut.
Oh my God, I had a pixie cut for a while and you don't know what to do. You're like, do I let it grow out or do I keep cutting it? I kept going back and forth. Yeah. And then this is like back to how I kind of grew. It's really long now, but I kind of just let it go because it's easier.
Yeah, I'm just like
haircuts in New York are so damn expensive.
They are.
Oh my God. My mom's actually arriving today from Alabama because we have a wedding next week for my cousin here. And I'm like, she has to cut my hair because I'm not going to my hairstylist.
Yeah.
I'm like, it was so expensive to like.
Where do you go?
Well, luckily, like I used to go to this woman who was really good with curly hair, but then it was on like Madison and like 30th or something, and then it closed. So then I found some like random Russian man on the Upper East Side who like kind of made me uncomfortable last time I was there. He was like giving me like this weird shoulder massage, and I was like, is this part of the thing? But it was like he'd never done that before, and I was like, ugh. And then I like, hate making conversations with like people,
really?
The same conversation with like this man. Maybe because it's him. I don't mind if it was someone I liked the other girl because she was like young and she also had curly hair and she got it. And this man was just like, I don't know. But I was just going to him for a trim, not a style. It wasn't that expensive. It was like $30 or something.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah.
But then I was like, oh, my mom can do this for free. Put her to work.
Yeah. I go to this place in the Lower East Side called Kita.
Oh, I think I've heard of that.
And it's all Japanese, and I love them. And they do give massages, so that's why I'm just like,
no, this guy was like amazing. An awkward, weird. Yeah,
I could imagine.
Do you know what I mean?
Like,
I was like, is this part of like? And he had never done that the first two times, so I was like,
yeah, no,
this is odd.
Yeah, no, that's disgusting and odd. Scary.
Yeah,
don't go back.
I know, I haven't, but I'm like, but it's cheap. I don't know. Is your place expensive?
Well, so I've been going there for years, but it's like $60 to like just get like my pixie cut done, and it's like usually thrown out here.
I feel like that's standard.
And they have like, they wash your hair, they massage you. Yeah. This one time while I was still in school, they were massaging me, and they're like, "You're really, really stressed out." Oh my
God, they tell me that all the time. I have not. Like anytime I've ever
like, you need to like calm down.
I feel it. I've been meditating lately. I do just like an app or something, and it's really helpful.
Meditating is so good. I've been doing like a lot of yoga, a lot of like trying to eat healthy and like trying not to eat gluten and things like that. And
it's kind of self-care.
Exactly. A lot of self-care, especially after school, because I was just like traumatized.
I don't know if you've talked about this on the podcast. I'm just interested how you went from.
I have.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about it, but
I know people ask me stuff, and I'm like, wait. Yeah,
okay.
I'm like, I don't want to be repetitive for this. No, I was just interested in how you got into acting from like Cornell, medical path to.
I was never a medical student.
Oh, you weren't. No, but you weren't like wanting to do medical. Oh, you were psychology.
Never.
And okay, me too.
Yeah. I was never interested. Like the only time I was like,
which my parents
I had a blip of interest in medicine was I found out there was a thing called Doctors Without Borders in middle school, and I was just like, that sounds awesome. I want to travel. And then like, in high school I was just like, no, I don't
never
like
had
it.
Any. I can't do blood. I can't do.
Yeah, I actually went into Cornell as an English major for creative writing, and then I was just like, what am I going to do with this? Like it was like my own.
You gotta like think about marketability, like career path and.
And I didn't really like that and it's fine because you're a young writer, but like every writer was writing about suicide, and I was just like, I can't handle this anymore.
I guess because of Cornell and the environment that it was.
It was like now looking back on it, I just feel like it was a really toxic environment, and like everyone's so young, and it's just like, how do you handle something as big as suicide and constantly? And there was definitely like, you drink a lot, and it's just like, are they drinking to like, numb it or whatever? And it was just like a really depressing place to be in. And I felt like no one else felt that but me. So I always felt like, oh, am I just like feeling things too much all the time? So I was always interested in psychology, especially moral psychology.
I almost studied psychology. That was going to be my, I love psychology. I'm so very
same. And I was just
it.
like so into it and passionate about it. And I went to Denmark to study positive psychology because like I was on this.
I'm so into that as well.
And that's why my cat is named what his name is, Hugo.
What does it mean?
It means the feeling of warmth and coziness and contentment with friends and family.
What? There's a word for that?
Yeah, it's a big culture in Denmark.
That's
beautiful. I was like obsessed with Denmark. I still am. I'm like in love with Denmark. So I studied positive psychology and human rights there in Denmark too. And I was like on the path to going to grad school. And then my senior year, I was just like, oh, I don't want to go to grad school. Like, what am I doing? Like, I will be miserable in grad school because it will be the same thing of like, I don't even know what we're competing for at the end of the day. And like, I've always been interested in the arts and creativity and like acting. So then I left, came to New York City, worked in tech for like 5 years. And I was like, I'm going to kill myself, like actually. And it was like that same feeling of like, oh, I can see why people kill themselves because I fucking hate this.
Well, especially if you do something you don't love or are passionate about. I know people are really passionate about tech and it's still very much intense and very hard to do. So I can imagine.
Especially if you're a woman of color.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, and it's just like it is the same culture of like white men like talking about everything all the time. And I was just like, I can't handle this. So like I just like on a whim, one of my friends from Cornell, he studied Meisner in LA and he messaged me and was just like, this is everything you ever wanted in storytelling. And I read a book about the Meisner technique. I was just like, okay, I'm just going to like go into this conservatory for 2 years where I lived basically for 2 years straight of like movement and voice and like film and TV and acting and like I felt like it was just like a lot of like I was telling you earlier of like breaking you down. Yeah. And what I appreciated about it is that it was all rooted in psychology. And like what I loved about psychology to begin with was because of the human experience and human behavior. And like when I majored in psychology, my whole thinking was like, well, if I know so much about psychology, then maybe I could write about it. And like that could be my way to like tap into creativity instead of going to grad school.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then I just finished in June. Yeah. And
I wish I knew what I wanted to do before going to grad school and putting myself in debt for the rest of my life. That would have been a really, but it was what got me here. Cause there's no way my parents were going to let me move to New York to do like what, like I needed a reason.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, I don't really believe in regret because I feel like the steps that I took led me to where I am now.
And that's okay.
But I just wish I didn't have like this loan saddling me. But hopefully if I become a successful comedian or writer, like I'll be able to pay that off. But it makes me angry about like the education system here, unlike in like Europe or wherever, like where education in Canada is actually accessible and healthcare. That's, oh my God, that's something I also feel really passionate about.
Yes. Yeah. And that's like why I've been like trying to figure out like what to eat and like be better about nutrition.
You have The Omnivore's Dilemma. That's a great book.
Yes. So I have that.
Tells you.
I have like all these like herbal books. Oh, maybe it's not here, but it's like somewhere over there.
I feel like we have similar tastes in books. So the mics are propped up on books and it actually looks really cool. But I feel like, I'm very much into like positive psychology and especially studying it in Denmark too. I was just like, I love this. I should live here forever. How long
I should have married someone there. I was only there for that semester, but then I kept going back to Scandinavia for like every travel trip. I was just like, I'm going to go to Scandinavia.
Okay, I'll have to ask you for recommendations. Yes. I now definitely want to go. Probably in the summer, right? Is the best time or what?
Yeah, summer is good. Like I actually really enjoyed the winter there, but I think it's just like they have a whole culture around it of like hygge and things like that. And like being cozy.
Why don't we have that in New York?
I don't know. I feel like everyone's a fucking asshole in New York.
Canada has a culture around it. I feel like a lot of the stuff is underground. Like in Montreal, when I went, a lot of the shops are under. Like you don't have to walk outside as much.
And there's like a lot of like candles and things like that, which I love. And there's beautiful. Like blankets.
I don't know why we make it harder for ourselves in New York.
No,
it's part of like I don't know. Like New Yorkers feel like you got to suffer and have grit, and I don't know.
I think Americans feel that.
You're right.
They're
but
just
it's even worse in New York, I feel.
Yeah, because it's all about like individualism and like you gotta no pain, no gain, things like that, which I fucking hate. And I'm just like, no.
I realize like in Palestine, nobody works this hard. Yes. Like when my cousin came, he was like surprised by how much people work. And we're like, you guys don't do anything. I was like, you work from 8 to 3 or 8 to 2 sometimes. Like it's ridiculous. And then they take like so many coffee breaks and like snack breaks and like it's hilarious. And I'm just like, what do people do? And then they live and everyone's out at night. You just go out every night. Like people just go out and you have that human connection. People, there's really not that same culture of being on your phone all the time. Also because data's limited there and like so people are conscientious of like using. I guess there's Wi-Fi everywhere, but it's kind of rude. You don't want to be on your phone all the time. Whereas people here, it's just like
it's like you're at lunch or something and people are just on their phones.
It's
and
like,
I'm just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's why I think doing podcasts is like really a cool way of like, it's funny because it's like we need an excuse to just have a normal human conversation and a connection. The only other time I've done that is like, I used to love this, but now I hate it. I don't know why, because sometimes it's a wild card when you're on a plane and sitting next to someone. Mm-hmm. So if it's a long flight and you sit next to a crazy person and you just have to listen to that, that's a nightmare. But if it's like I used to love just having random conversations with people on planes and I would just be like, I want to know your life story. And I used to think that was really cool. Maybe that's a podcast idea.
Yeah, I mean, I used to host before Garrett moved in. I used to host a lot of couch surfers, and that was like my way of like trying to connect with people, and like also my excuse to like when I go to their country, they can host me for free.
Free?
It's free. Yeah, it's a hospitality exchange, and you meet the coolest people.
My only fear is safety in that.
I was very strategic about it because like on the site you have reviews and references.
I guess like Airbnb. I used to Airbnb a long time ago, but I was never home, so I didn't care who was there.
I'm always home with them, and I'm always just like hanging out and like taking them to places.
That's so nice.
And I would vet everyone. Like it's very apparent when it's like some creepo dude.
I'm on the website because I know they have like a lot of events and stuff, and I was like trying to promote like one of my shows or something on there. But there's a lot of good people that just want to travel and see.
Yeah, I mean, like when I was always of the mindset like when you travel, you should just be a good ambassador for your country because like, you know, when you go abroad as an American, people fucking hate you.
Oh my God. I hate telling people. I don't tell people I'm American. I tell them I'm Palestinian from New York that lives in New York.
I mean, I thankfully have the face where people don't think I'm American. They're just like, where are you from in Asia?
Right. And even if you said America, they know you're not like a white girl or something.
Exactly.
So as long as they know that like I come from culture, like or from I get it. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, because even when I was in Denmark, people were just like, "Why did you vote for Bush?" And I was just like, "Well, I didn't vote for Bush. I wasn't even like allowed to vote at that time." Yeah, I can't.
Whoever thought Bush would look so good in comparison? I mean,
not good, he was also
awful. He's horrible, but. Nothing compared to, I mean, not nothing, but this is just a notch above that for sure.
Yeah.
A few notches above.
Yeah, the world is crazy right now, but hopefully.
Maybe it always has been but different reasons.
Yeah, I think it's just like it's been amplified.
I'm really hoping that the people that did vote for Trump have opened up their eyes.
I don't think they have.
They just like live in their, because honestly, all this stuff was also apparent before.
Yeah.
Maybe not to the same extent, but it's like, wait, you didn't see any of this coming? Like, and you still voted for him? But a lot of people also voted for him based on like, I don't know, just, I think stupid reasons, like promises for like tax cuts and all this bullshit that he fed them. And it's like, it's not really helping anybody. Yeah. The only person, or he spoke to the middle class, but I don't think he's serving them really in any way. So I hope that maybe at least living through that experience, they're like, yeah, my life hasn't become any better since he's become president. Yeah. So why vote for him? again. But we'll see.
I really, really hope. Well, I don't know. I can't really put anything out there. I'm just like it. I've been so disillusioned. I've never really enjoyed living in the United States. Like growing up, it's like whatever. Like I enjoy certain aspects of it, but New York is like as far as I can get away from it.
Me too. Me too. New York is its own thing, and I think for creativity and for opportunities, it's like a cool place to be. But it can be kind of rough.
It is definitely. There's still moments where I'm like, I cannot stand white liberals. Like they need to also shut the fuck up and stop perpetuating more racism. But yeah, it's this whole thing where I'm just like, I'm trying to hold on to hope. Yeah. But it's really hard to.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. But we have to. We have to keep pushing forward. We have to have that same burning passion of Madam C.J. Walker, who was like, who wasn't like, oh, but I was born in, into this plantation home and I'm African American in the 1800s. Like, she didn't let that stop her. And I think if looking to people like that for inspiration is really important because it keeps you going and you're like, I can get up today and walk to the train. My standards are very low as to, but I can pursue my dreams and my passions, and they're not silly and they're not stupid, and they're worth vocalizing.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, and I love doing these episodes because it's just like, oh, there were people who had it way worse, and I'm just like complaining about one person, Trump.
Yeah, exactly. Where, oppression can be way worse, I guess. Not that we want to like sit here and compare, but I don't know. I mean, that's how I think of like coming from oppressed people in Palestine, and I think about what they're going through now, and I'm like, oh, I gotta like, I can push myself forward and go to a show or an open mic and like have people like laugh or not laugh at my material. And like, I don't know. It's just, we weren't programmed this way. I also love that she did pursue something creative, because I think like making hair products and stuff is a really cool creative thing.
Yeah.
And they always like say, like, for entrepreneurs, like, start with something that's a problem for you. So I think it was something like really close to her, and that's something she was experiencing. And then she was able to resolve that for her and for many other people. And then she also employed so many women and educated them and gave them a trade to find jobs, and it's just incredibly like moving and powerful.
Yeah. Is there anything, I guess, like as we're wrapping up, is there anything you want to give to the audience, like any advice you sort of did, like going forward, or anything just from your own life that you want to talk about?
I think that's what I love about like positive psychology, just to bring it back to that, is just, we're so negative, and we're stuck in such a negative mind space or headspace, and it's so easy to go down that path and to keep telling yourself these thoughts. But why don't we ever think about how things would be if they did work out? Why is it always like, oh, this? And sometimes like we trick ourselves, especially as women, into believing the messages that we've been given externally by like white men or oppressors or whoever. And, we can't let those voices in, because then they just win and it gives them further power. So we need to just kind of, I don't know, meditate. I think it's good. Do something creative. Have some sort of outlet, write, even if it's just for yourself, even if it's on a napkin, just to be in touch with your feelings and your emotions, and also connect with other people, because sometimes when we're feeling the most alone, that's when we want to retreat and not talk to anybody. But if you talk to other people, and you'll see that we're all human. We feel the same feelings, and we should talk to other people and connect, and not be on our phones the whole time. And just start a podcast, everybody.
Yeah, start a podcast. On that note, like one of the things that really stuck with me when I was studying positive psychology in Denmark was, I remember reading this paper, like a research paper, but the one paragraph that stuck with me was the person was saying cynicism and negative outlooks is just like a theory of the world, and just in the same way that being optimistic is also a theory of the world. So you can choose which theory you want to prescribe to the world. And like from then on out, I was just like, that's like the thing that always stuck, which was just like, oh, I can choose to be cynical and be like, the world is burning and like everything is hell. Or to be like, you know what, like we can move forward from this, and like, let me also walk to the train today and like move forward. And I think it's really great that like you're also doing open mics and like pursuing your creativity as well, because representation is so courageous, and to like put that out there.
Yeah, I hope there's more, and there will be more. It's growing, and I think the environment is changing a little bit, maybe more in our favor. And we can also, as women of color and people of color, help cultivate that that experience for others, and help create a better space where it's more welcoming for us to pursue creative endeavors and to just to do more and pursue non-traditional like career paths, which because we need more people in like production and film, and we need people at the top to help funnel everybody up also. And that's important, to create a community around that.
Yeah, that's something like I've talked about on this podcast too a lot, which is like being behind the camera is just as important as being in front, if not more important. Because you never know like what white writer will like write and like director, and it will just like you will have more creative control in that way. And like if you're in the room and like you can stop something racist and sexist from happening, like that's very, very powerful.
Yeah, we need everyone, and we need people in all positions, like writing and directing and casting and production and lights and everything costume design, I don't know, everything I think is important.
Is there anything else you want to plug?
For shows, you can just go to atheeryacoub.com and you'll find everything on there.
Okay. Any Instagram handles or?
Everything is at Atheer Yacoub.
Oh, so easy.
Yeah, I tried.
That's so great. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing it. Yeah,
Anytime.
of course. And if you have any other history you want